What's up? In this video, I'm gonna show you how to make a sourdough bagel. Naturally fermented, made with a rye levain. We're gonna make some with seeds, some without. These are delicious. Let's get started. For these sourdough bagels, we're gonna use a rye levain. So we're gonna start with 6 grams of levain, which is just a little tiny amount. So we're just gonna put a little bit in there. It's gonna rise overnight, so we don't need too much. There we go. I've got 129 grams of water, and then I've got 129 grams of flour. I like to mix it in here because it's easier than mixing it in the final jar, so we can get in there and really get this mixed. Once you've got all the ingredients fully incorporated, there's no dry bits, we're gonna place this inside a jar. I happen to keep my extra jars in the proofer. To do this easily, I'm just gonna wet my hands a little bit. I'm gonna pick this up so when your hands are wet, you can actually kind of work this. And then I'm gonna just drop it in there. Make sure we get all the bits out of this container. And with a wet hand again, I'm just gonna press this down into the jar. Wipe your hands. And I'm just gonna stick a little label on this. We're gonna put it in the proofer and we will let it rise for about 12 hours. I'm gonna let this rise at 22 degrees Celsius. Right. Here we go. And we will see you in the morning. Time to mix our sourdough bagels. Our levain has been rising overnight and it looks beautiful. Now this has gone for just over 12 hours, but I got a family and sometimes life gets in the way, but you can see it hasn't started collapsing yet. It's got a nice openness to it. You can see it's clearly risen. It's got lots of great air bubbles in it. Oof, the smell is super strong, and this rye levain is gonna give our bagels a ton of flavor. So we're gonna start by putting our water in. This is 661 grams of water, followed by our malt syrup, 36 grams. Bloop. Don't worry if you can't get it all out, but do your best to scrape that out of there. Next, our diastatic malt powder. I'm gonna scrape my rye levain out of here. Look at that. Gonna try and get as much of this out of here as we can. Next, I'm gonna add my salt to my flour. And finally, we're gonna put our dry into our wet. We're gonna put this on the mixer and mix for about 8 to 10 minutes. So I want to start this on first speed, and as you can see, I'm using the planetary mixer, but only because it's a small batch of bagels. If I wanted to scale this recipe, I would mix it in here. Just keep in mind, a spiral mixer is going to generate more friction factor and bring that dough temperature up. So make sure to start this on first speed and let it mix until ingredients are all combined, about 2 minutes. Then we're going to kick it up to second speed and let it fire up. In the meantime, I'm going to clear these dishes. Our dough has been mixing for about 2 minutes. You can see it's come together fully. It's scraped off the sides of the bowl. And we're gonna kick it up to second speed and get some really good gluten development. Make sure you stop your mixer before you turn it. Otherwise, you're gonna grind those gears down over time. And we're gonna mix this on second speed. Dough's been mixing for about 8 minutes and it's ready to come off the mixer. I've lightly oiled my container. Oh. The dough should come out in one solid piece. See, piece, like that. Your mixing bowl should be clean and clear. I always like to finish these doughs by hand because it lets you judge the strength a little bit better. Another thing we're gonna do real quick, I've got some water here. I'm gonna lightly wet my hands. I'm gonna take a little ball about the size of an apricot, and we're gonna, with wet hands, stretch this out. Now we should have sort of improved mix where our dough will stretch into a thin layer but not even, and it'll start to tear in the corners. We're gonna ferment this overnight. It's quite stiff and it's gonna get a lot of strength. So I'm gonna round this back up, place this into a ball. You can see the nice specks of rye in there. We're gonna put this inside our container, and of course we're gonna take the temperature. Our DDT here, our desired dough temperature, we're aiming for 26 to 28 degrees Celsius. Now I'm a little bit over. You can see I'm 28.9, but I'm in a bit of a cold environment, so that's fine, and I'm gonna leave this at room temp. If my dough was a little on the cooler side, I could always put it inside my little proofer. If it was on the really hot side, I could stick it in the fridge for a bit. So I'm just gonna leave this on the counter, let's say here, and allow this to bulk ferment for about 3 hours, after which we're gonna shape it. So I'll see you in 3 hours. Our bagel dough has been fermenting for just over 3 hours. I meant to leave this for 3 hours, but you know what? Life gets in the way sometimes, but it's okay. You can see it's very well risen. It's got a nice dome on it, and it looks very light and fluffy. We're gonna divide our bagels into 120 to 130 gram pieces. So I'm gonna take this out. It should come out real easy. You can see nothing, wow, almost nothing. And it should feel really good. The other thing you wanna check is it smells fermented. If you manage your temperature properly, it should be perfect. So what I like to do is to put it into almost a square, and I'll cut a strip across the bottom, and I'm gonna cut this into 3 pieces. It's going to be much easier to cut good sizes off of this than to try and cut this weird round piece. So I always like to cut a strip, put it in front of you, make your workplace easy. I'll move those over there. There's scale. Now, don't be too fussy here, but we're gonna aim between 120 to 130 gram pieces. This dough is a few grams over 133, but whatever. If you're running a business, maybe you want to get a bit more specific there, but I'm not. This is just for my family, so we're gonna stop there. Now, this has been pretty good cutting. This one's a little bit under. If you have an extra piece, you're gonna want to put that in the middle. Try to use up those chunks. This is a little bit chaotic, so I'm just gonna take a moment to organize this. And I like to always create a matrix. This kind of comes from my restaurant days. It makes it easier to count how many pieces you have. So when the chef comes in and says, how many of these do you have? You just, you know, you already know. Have a little bit of scraps here. Now this is never going to make as good of a bagel as one piece, but that's okay. Next, we're gonna pre-shape our bagel. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put it in front of you. You're gonna flatten it on the table, and we're gonna shape this into the start of a log or a cylinder. So something just like that, okay? And then we'll place them off to the side. So flatten, ideally this ends up as a log, so if your shape is kind of like this, you're gonna have to watch the way you pre-shape it. Bring in, and each time I'm pressing a little bit of tension, okay? Once these are pre-shaped, we're gonna leave them on the table for about 20 minutes. We're gonna final shape them, put them on some trays, leave them out, and they're gonna go in the fridge overnight. Try and speed through this. Once you do this over and over, you get pretty quick at it. Because this is a very dry dough, we're gonna wanna cover these or they're gonna dry out. I keep a few plastic bags on a hook so that I can reuse these over and over and over. And we are just going to cover them up. And I'll use these to cover my breads or whatever. You can use a towel if you'd like. With a wet dough, it's usually okay to leave it uncovered, but with a dry dough, they'll develop a skin quite quickly, and that's really gonna prevent you from doing your final shape. So we're gonna place this over top. I'm gonna set my timer for 20 minutes. and on the table. I'll see you in 20 minutes. It's been about 20 minutes. That should be enough time for our bagel dough to relax a little bit. We're gonna give them the final shape. So I'm gonna keep some of them covered, but because we are doing a demonstrational video, I'm actually gonna move them quickly so that you don't have those bags in your view. What we're gonna do here is we're gonna give the bagels a shape, we're gonna leave them out a little bit, and then we're gonna put them into the fridge overnight. Tomorrow morning, we'll pull them out, blanch, and bake them. So I'm gonna get a couple Silpats. If you don't have a Silpat, you could just use a piece of parchment paper. You could also use a plastic dough tub. Depending on what style of bagel you're trying to make, you may want to change the length. Keep in mind, they're going to grow a little bit while they're proofing. They're also going to grow when you blanch and bake them. So if you make it too tight, you won't have that hole in the middle. So I've rolled this to about 32 centimeters. I'm going to pull this in, put my hand in between, and I'm going to apply pressure on the table, okay? It's really important to apply that pressure or your bagels will come apart in blanching. Now you can see there, I'm going for that sort of thinner style of bagel, but again, you do you. This recipe makes 16 to 18 bagels. I've got 17 here. It depends on how big you cut them, if you're going over. Now, I'm making this for my family, so I didn't really care too much about the weight. If you're making them for sale and you're tracking something like that, you might want to get them exactly within a few grams, but in my experience, it's more trouble than it's worth to do that and a waste of time. We're gonna cover our bagels and let them sit out for about an hour and a half. This is gonna let them grow a little bit, and then we're gonna place them in the fridge overnight. If you don't have the Silpat, please remember, you're gonna need to put some cornmeal or semolina onto your parchment or a board or your proofing bin, just because they're gonna stick. But with the Silpat, because it's gonna be cold, they're gonna come off very easily tomorrow. So we're gonna get these covered, we're gonna let them sit out, and I'll see you tomorrow. After you shaped your bagels, we're gonna let them sit out for about 2 hours. Then we're gonna place them in the fridge overnight. What I like to do is cover them with a bag, and I'll place another tray on top so that I can stack them in the fridge. So the first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna grab a tray, and we're just gonna place this off on an angle. Next, I'm gonna take a garbage bag. Again. Next, I'm gonna take a garbage bag. We're gonna open that up and just place this inside. Now, I like to place it right to the corner like that, fold the rest of the bag underneath, and bring the top down. This is going to allow us to stack these in the fridge because I do have 2 fridges at home and one is dedicated for baking, but I still have a lot of stuff in my fridge. So we're gonna let these sit out 2 hours in the fridge overnight, and I will see you tomorrow. Sourdough bagels have been in the fridge overnight. Let's take a look. Then we're gonna blanch and bake them. This is great because it allows you a lot of flexibility in your schedule. Oh yeah, they look great. Before we bake our bagels, we're gonna blanch them in water with malt syrup. So I've preheated my oven to 246 degrees Celsius or 475 Fahrenheit. I'm on convection, so if you're not, you could bump that up to 500 or 260 Celsius. I've got my pot. I've got a cooling rack here to take them out onto. I've got some seeds here. I'm gonna throw a few in sesame seeds. And I've got my malt syrup, and of course, I've got my naturally fermented bagels. So we're gonna let this, oh, it's already boiling. And we're gonna put a bit of malt syrup in here. Ugh. We just want enough to darken the water, and we're gonna change the exterior texture of the bagel. So we're gonna start with a spoon. Next, we're going to pick up our bagel and place it into the boiling water. The cold bagel is going to drop that temperature a little bit, but I want it to boil the whole time. And I'm going to try and do, I think I can do all these in there. No, I'll stop there. I've got the spider ready, and we're going to give them about 30 seconds per side, and we'll flip them over. All right, so they're floating and they've puffed a little bit, and I'm gonna just take them out. Oops. And place them onto the cooling rack beside. I'm trying to flip them over so the side that was down on the tray is now down again. And now I'm gonna put them back on the tray. If you wanna put some seeds on it before you do, put them in here while they're wet and just roll them around in the seeds. Of course, I got a wet hand, so it's kind of sticking to my hand. There we go. And we're gonna put that on the tray. You can do just one side if you want. You can do the whole thing if you'd like. Totally up to you. So we'll do this tray with sesame, and I'll do the next tray without. We're gonna throw these in the oven for 20 to 25 minutes. And I'll see them soon. So this is actually the first time I've baked anything in this new oven, so let's hope that they go well. It's been about 20 minutes and our bagels look fantastic. Now, this is the first time I've actually used this oven. It's brand new. So I hope I got the time right. Oh yeah, look at that. They look wonderful. Now, a couple of these got a little, this one got a little bit dark in the corner. The rest of them look perfect. Well, that's what happens when you use a new oven.